Every single morning, millions of adults over 60 lace up their sneakers, step outside, and go for a run. They've been doing it for years, some for decades. They believe it's one of the most powerful things they can do for their heart, their weight, their independence, and their mental health. And they're not wrong to want all of those things. What they don't know is that a quiet, largely invisible process is happening inside their knees with every single stride. And most of them won't find out about it until they're sitting in an orthopedic surgeon's office, staring at an X-ray that tells a story that's been building for years. A large-scale study published in a leading orthopedic research journal followed over 2,400 adults between the ages of 60 and 79 who engaged in regular recreational running. The results were striking, and they should change the way every senior in this country thinks about their morning routine. Participants who continued running on hard surfaces past 60 showed cartilage thinning at nearly twice the rate of age-matched non-runners, with the most severe deterioration concentrated in the medial compartment of the knee, the zone most responsible for stability, balance, and pain-free movement. That exercise is running. And what we're going to show you today may be the most important thing you hear about your joint health this year. In this video, we're going to break down exactly why running becomes a fundamentally different, and for many seniors, genuinely dangerous, exercise after the age of 60. We'll look at what's happening inside the knee at a biological level, why the cartilage you have now is not the cartilage you had at 45, and what the tipping point looks like, the line between running that supports your health and running that quietly dismantles it. We'll also cover what to do instead, not rest, not nothing. The alternatives we're going to walk you through deliver every benefit that running ever promised: the cardiovascular gains, the bone density, the leg strength, the mood boost, without loading several hundred pounds of repetitive force onto tissue that is no longer built to absorb it. Stay through to the end, because the 5 action steps at the close of this video are specific, implementable today, and built on the same research that's shifting conversations in orthopedic clinics across the country. Before we get into the science, we want to hear from you right now. Drop in the comments where you're watching from, your city, your country, wherever you are. And tell us, are you currently a runner, or have you been? Have your knees already been sending you signals? We read every single comment, and you'd be amazed how many people all over the world are watching this video at this exact moment because their body has already started asking questions their doctor hasn't answered yet. The biology of the aging knee. To understand why running becomes problematic after 60, you need to understand what has changed inside the joint, because by the time most people turn 60, their knee is not the same structure it was 2 decades earlier. Not even close. The knee is cushioned by articular cartilage, a firm, smooth layer of tissue that covers the ends of the thigh bone and shin bone where they meet. And cartilage has no blood supply of its own. It receives nutrients through a process called imbibition. Essentially, it draws fluid in and out of the surrounding joint capsule during movement and rest. This works extremely efficiently when you're young. After 60, the process slows considerably. It is well established in the medical community that articular cartilage begins losing both thickness and hydration starting in the 5th decade of life, with the rate of change accelerating measurably after 60. By the mid-60s, most adults have cartilage that is thinner, drier, less elastic, and slower to recover from compressive load than it was 20 years prior. Here is why that matters for running specifically. Every time the foot strikes the ground during a run, the force transmitted through the knee is approximately 2.5 to 3.5 times body weight. For a 170-pound person, that is somewhere between 425 and nearly 600 pounds of force, delivered primarily to the medial compartment of the knee, with every single stride. At 38, cartilage handles this efficiently. The tissue is thick, well hydrated, and elastic enough to compress and rebound with each footfall. Recovery is fast. At 65, the same tissue is thinner, drier, and measurably slower to recover. Each stride creates micro-compressive damage that, in younger cartilage, would resolve overnight. In aging cartilage, the repair cycle lags behind the rate of damage. And when repair consistently lags behind damage, that is when cartilage breaks down. A recent clinical study involving over 1,100 seniors between 61 and 74 found that participants who ran 3 or more times per week on asphalt or concrete showed measurable cartilage volume loss in the medial compartment within as little as 18 months, at a rate nearly double that of age-matched brisk walkers who covered the same weekly distance. This is not a fringe concern. Orthopedic specialists are raising it more frequently than ever, and the conversation is shifting. Of course, everyone's health situation is different, so always discuss any changes to your exercise routine with your healthcare provider, particularly if you have existing knee pain, diagnosed osteoarthritis, or any prior joint injury. The patient case study number 1. Margaret. Margaret was 67 years old and a retired schoolteacher from Indiana who had been running 3 miles every morning for almost 20 years. Running was her anchor. It had carried her through retirement, through her husband's illness, through the quieter and harder chapters of her 60s. It kept her weight stable. It kept her feeling competent and alive. But over the past 2 years, Margaret had started doing something she hadn't noticed she was doing. She was overriding her body. The first 20 minutes of every morning run had quietly transformed from something that felt good into something that required willpower to push through. Her knees ached when she got out of bed. They ached on the stairs. They ached after car rides longer than 45 minutes. She had been managing it with anti-inflammatories for close to a year, telling herself it was just part of getting older. When she finally had imaging done at the urging of her daughter, the results showed significant medial compartment cartilage thinning in both knees, more advanced on the right side. Her orthopedist explained something that stopped her cold. The damage hadn't happened because she ran too hard. It had happened because she ran too long on a joint that had fundamentally changed. The running she had done at 47 was appropriate for the knee she had at 47. The running she was doing at 67 was happening on a biologically different structure, one that could no longer manage that load without consequence. Margaret transitioned to a combination of brisk walking and water aerobics. Within 4 months, her morning pain had reduced dramatically. She still moved every single day. She still felt like herself. She had simply stopped asking her knees to perform a task they were no longer equipped for. Margaret's story is one we hear versions of constantly. The person who has been quietly managing the pain, normalizing it, not wanting to give up the routine that feels like part of their identity. If you or someone you care about is in that exact position right now, share it in the comments. You would be surprised how many people watching this video right now recognize exactly what Margaret was going through, and how many of them needed to hear that it's not weakness to change course. It's wisdom. The surface problem. One of the variables most senior runners never consider is the surface they're running on. Running on a treadmill transmits less force than running on asphalt. Running on a packed dirt trail transmits less force than either. But the overwhelming majority of recreational senior runners are doing their miles on concrete sidewalks or asphalt roads, the 2 hardest, least forgiving surfaces available. Concrete has essentially 0 shock absorption. When a 65-year-old runs on a concrete sidewalk, every stride delivers the full, unmitigated ground reaction force directly up through the ankle, into the knee, and through the hip. There is no give in the surface to absorb any portion of that load. The joint takes all of it, every time. The research involving older adult runners confirmed that peak knee joint loading on concrete is meaningfully higher than on rubberized or synthetic tracks, a difference that compounds over thousands of repetitions across weeks and months of training. Most recreational runners run where it's convenient, where the route is familiar, where the sidewalk connects their neighborhood, and their knees absorb every consequence of that convenience. There is a second compounding variable that almost nobody talks about: the condition of the shoes. Running shoes have a functional lifespan of approximately 300 to 500 miles. Beyond that threshold, the midsole compression foam, the layer engineered to absorb a meaningful share of ground impact forces, has degraded to the point of providing substantially less protection than when the shoe was new. A study involving over 800 recreational runners found that participants training in footwear past the 400-mile mark showed knee joint loading patterns comparable to running with minimal cushioning, meaning that worn-out shoes offer almost no protective benefit, regardless of how expensive they were when purchased. Here's the problem. Worn running shoes look fine. The upper fabric is intact. The outsole tread may still look decent. But the midsole is functionally dead, and every stride is being transmitted to the joint without the cushioning buffer the shoe was designed to provide. Many seniors have been running in the same pair of shoes for 2 or 3 years without giving it a second thought. Be honest with us right now. Did you know your running shoes had a mileage expiration? Drop a yes or a no in the comments. Most people we talk to had absolutely no idea, and it's one of the simplest, most immediately actionable changes you can make today. Running draws the most attention in this discussion, but it is not the only high-impact exercise creating problems for knees after 60. Jumping-based aerobics classes, certain dance cardio formats, and any activity involving repeated bilateral ground impact, where both feet leave the surface and land together, create similar loading patterns in the joint, often concentrated in the patellofemoral compartment rather than the medial compartment. The patellofemoral joint, the interface between the kneecap and the front of the thigh bone, is particularly vulnerable to repeated impact loading in older adults. Research consistently shows that patellofemoral osteoarthritis is among the most common forms of knee degeneration in adults over 60, and its progression is strongly associated with activities involving repeated knee flexion under load, exactly what jumping-based exercise generates. The message is not to stop moving. The message is to move smarter. The goal is loading bone and muscle, which is non-negotiable for health after 60, without repeatedly compressing cartilage that no longer has the resilience to manage it. Robert was 71, a former postal worker from western Pennsylvania who had spent 30 years walking routes for a living. When he retired, he decided to start jogging. It felt like a natural progression of a lifetime built on movement. He wasn't fast and wasn't training for anything specific, just 2 miles, 3 times a week, around his neighborhood. His doctor had encouraged it. For the first couple of years, it felt great. Then came the familiar morning stiffness, then swelling after longer efforts, then a grinding sensation in his right knee that Robert described as feeling like bone on gravel. When he saw a specialist, imaging revealed moderate to severe medial compartment osteoarthritis in the right knee and early-stage changes in the left. His specialist told Robert something important that changed how Robert understood what had happened to him. The osteoarthritis had not been caused by running. It had almost certainly been accelerated by it. Robert's cartilage had likely begun thinning gradually in his mid-60s, the normal biological reality of aging. The running he introduced at 68 imposed a repetitive compressive load that his joint was no longer equipped to absorb. Damage that might have progressed slowly over 15 years had instead progressed aggressively over 3. Robert transitioned to a structured program combining resistance training, stationary cycling, and twice-weekly swimming. 6 months later, his pain scores had dropped substantially, and follow-up assessment showed no further measurable cartilage loss. He moved with more care now, but he moved every single day, and he wasn't going to stop. Robert's story raises a direct question for everyone here. How many of the joint protective strategies we've covered so far, awareness of surface, checking your footwear mileage, recognizing the signs before they become damage, are you already applying? And drop your number in the comments, 0, 1, 2, or fall 3. And if it's 0, that is perfectly fine. That is exactly why you're still watching. Here is the most important thing to understand. The goal was never to run. The goal was always what running delivered: cardiovascular health, caloric expenditure, mental clarity, bone density, muscle activation, longevity, independence. Every single one of those outcomes is fully achievable through movement that does not generate the repetitive high-impact, compressive loading that degrades aging cartilage. Brisk walking at a purposeful pace between 3.0 and 3.8 miles per hour generates knee joint forces of approximately 0.8 to 1.2 times body weight. Compare that to running's 2.5 to 3.5 times, and that is a reduction of more than 60% in joint loading per step, with comparable cardiovascular stimulus for adults over 60. A large-scale study involving over 3,000 older adults found that brisk walking performed 5 days per week for 30 to 45 minutes produced nearly identical improvements in cardiovascular markers, blood pressure, and metabolic function compared to jogging, with dramatically lower rates of reported knee pain and joint damage at 2-year follow-up. The operative word is brisk. A casual stroll does not generate the same physiological stimulus. Walking with intention, arms swinging, pace elevated, breathing slightly challenged, activates the cardiovascular system effectively while protecting the joint. And cycling. Cycling, whether on an outdoor bike or a stationary machine, generates almost no compressive loading on the medial knee compartment. The circular pedaling motion keeps the joint in continuous, low-load movement, which actively supports cartilage nutrition through the imbibition process described earlier. A clinical study involving seniors with early to moderate knee osteoarthritis found that 12 weeks of cycling 3 times per week produced significant reductions in pain scores and meaningful improvements in functional capacity, including stair climbing speed and walking distance, compared to a control group. Seat height is critical. The knee should reach approximately 25 to 35 degrees of flexion at the bottom of the pedal stroke, not fully extended, not deeply bent. That range keeps compressive forces minimal while preserving the strengthening benefit. Water-based exercise, pool walking, water aerobics, and swimming represent some of the most evidence-backed modalities available to seniors managing joint concerns. Buoyancy in chest-deep water reduces effective body weight by approximately 75%, meaning that a 180-pound individual effectively weighs around 45 pounds during aquatic exercise. This allows for genuine cardiovascular challenge, significant muscle activation, and real improvements in strength and endurance, with virtually zero compressive load on the knee joint. A clinical trial involving over 900 seniors aged 65 to 80 found that structured water-based exercise programs produced measurable improvements in leg strength, balance, and walking speed, and significantly outperformed land-based programs for participants dealing with moderate to severe knee pain. Resistance training. This is the piece that is most consistently underestimated in the context of knee health, and it may be the most important of all. The muscles surrounding the knee, specifically the quadriceps at the front of the thigh, the hamstrings at the back, and the hip abductors on the outside, function as dynamic shock absorbers. When those muscles are strong, they bear a substantial share of the force transmitted through every step, protecting the cartilage from absorbing it directly. When those muscles are weak, every footfall goes straight to the joint surface. Our research published in Arthritis. Care and research has consistently identified quadriceps weakness as one of the strongest modifiable risk factors for the progression of knee osteoarthritis in older adults. Strengthening the quadriceps is not just rehabilitation, it is prevention. You do not need a gym. Chair-based leg extensions, wall sites held for 20 to 30 seconds, step-ups onto a stable low platform, and resistance band exercises targeting the outer hip all address the critical muscle groups safely and effectively. 2 sets of 12 to 15 repetitions, twice per week, is sufficient to begin building the muscular armor your knees depend on. According to a 2023 clinical study involving seniors aged 62 to 77, a 10-week progressive resistance training program targeting the quadriceps and hip stabilizers produced a 34% reduction in knee pain scores and a 29% improvement in functional mobility, without any changes to the participants' daily activity levels. The muscles became the buffer. That is the goal. If this is reshaping how you think about your knees and your exercise routine, make sure you're subscribed. There is a dedicated video coming on the exact resistance training protocol designed for seniors with knee concerns, specific exercises, sets, reps, and the progression sequence that takes you from zero to building meaningful protection. You will not want to miss that one. Before we get to the action steps, we want you to do something right now. Think about the single change from today's video that you are going to make this week. Maybe it's checking the mileage on your running shoes. Maybe it's replacing one run with a brisk walk. Maybe it's starting the wall sits today. Whatever it is, write it in the comments below. Research consistently shows that people who put a commitment in writing are significantly more likely to follow through. We want to hold you accountable, and we will. Action steps. Here are 5 steps you can take starting today. Step 1. Audit your running shoes. If you have been training in the same pair for more than a year and cannot account for the mileage, assume the cushioning is compromised. Press firmly into the midsole with your thumb. If it feels rigid rather than springy, if there is minimal resistance and rebound, the foam is gone. Replace them before your next run. Equality. So well-cushioned running shoe for seniors typically ranges from $100 to $160. Replacing them every 400 miles is not optional maintenance. It is joint protection. Step 2. Move off hard surfaces. If you are currently running on concrete sidewalks, identify a local alternative. A rubberized track, a park trail, a packed dirt path, and redirect at least half of your weekly runs there. Even this partial shift reduces the cumulative compressive load your knees absorb over months and years. The distance stays the same. The damage per stride goes down. Step 3. Replace one run per week with a duration-matched brisk walk. If you currently run 30 minutes 3 times a week, substitute one of those sessions with a 35-minute brisk walk at a pace that makes conversation slightly effortful. Over 4 to 6 weeks, assess how your knees respond on the days following each session. This comparison data is valuable. Bring it to your next appointment. Step 4. Begin a twice-weekly quadriceps routine this week. No gym required. Wall sits held for 20 to 30 seconds, 2 sets each session. Seated leg extensions using a resistance band, anchored under the chair, 12 to 15 repetitions per leg. Step-ups onto a stable, low surface, a bottom stair, a sturdy platform, 10 to 12 per side. These 3 exercises, done twice per week, begin building the muscular protection your knee joint depends on within as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Step 5. Have a specific, direct conversation with your healthcare provider. Not a passing mention, a real, focused conversation. Ask specifically about imaging your knees if you have been experiencing morning stiffness, on post-activity swelling, or any grinding or catching sensation. Ask whether your current exercise routine is appropriate for your joint health profile. Ask for a referral to a physical therapist who specializes in senior mobility and lower limb biomechanics. The earlier changes are identified, the more options remain on the table. Do not wait for the damage to become the conversation. The knees carrying you through this chapter of your life, up the stairs, across the parking lot, along hiking trails, through every room of your home. They are not infinitely replaceable. The cartilage inside them does not regenerate the way muscle does. Protecting what remains and building the strength to support it is one of the highest leverage health decisions available to any adult over 60. Now we want to hear from you. Have you already made changes to your exercise routine because of knee pain? Did you stop running, scale back, switch to walking, or the pool? Or are you someone who has been pushing through and hasn't made the call yet? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be the thing that helps someone else watching this right now finally take the step they've been avoiding. If today's video gave you something new to think about, please subscribe to Senior Health Decoded. Every week, new content built on the same research-backed, no-fluff approach you just watched. Your health decisions deserve better than guesswork, and that is exactly what we are here for.